All right, why don't we get started? Welcome, esteemed citizens who are joining us for the public meeting.
Hi.
Hi, Linda. So we'll open the public meeting. The first thing on the agenda is that this person's not here, so we'll have Jesse when he shows up.
Yeah.
I don't have any updates specifically. I'll just get to them when we reach them in the warrant, when we go over that.
Do you have an agenda I can copy and put on the door?
I didn't leave them.
Copy of the,
agenda, and I'll copy it, put it on
Do you
the,
have one? Okay.
I'll put it on the signboard.
Just the top.
I'll just make a copy and I'll bring it back.
okay.
How are you? Marvelous, getting better with age. How about you? You catching up to me?
Every day I'm catching up to you. You got a good head start though.
Oh, man.
No, I'm about to catch up in a big way, in a couple months. Sensitive subject.
You got your plot yet?
Is he offering you a discount?
Put away your tape measure.
All right, so the way we
I've
turn
got
it,
one. Save one for me. I don't have one.
Okay. Hello. So I guess what we usually don't. So I guess unless the people in the crowd have any anything that they want to state, we can just usually proceed through the agenda and read them off, and if anybody has any comments, I'm sorry, the warrant rather, then you can stop us and we can talk about it. So we'll start at the top. Thank you.
Do you want any more?
No.
Hold on a second.
Did you email it to her? I emailed it.
As you wish.
Did you get Linda? You're up, Jess.
Oh,
Hi.
great. Sorry to be a couple minutes late. Don't worry.
We're just transitioning out of our last meeting.
Yeah.
Do you want to sit on this side so you can see the?
No, that's all right. They can get them like this.
Oh.
Whatever is preferred.
So thanks for coming in. So I think we'll just get right into it. So I think why we were glad that you could join us.
Mm-hmm.
We were wondering, we got our last meeting with you regarding the Lower Village Street situation.
Mm-hmm.
And we were hoping to get an update. And I think there's
Sure.
been some developments. And you said you'd come back, and it seems like
Yeah.
sort of just timed up. It happened to be the public meeting.
Okay.
So if you want to
Sure.
just start where you think appropriate.
Yeah. So tonight is televised as well, right? So
Yes.
if it's, I'd like to kind of just give a little bit of background just for folks who may watch this rather than kind of jump into exactly where you're at. If that's okay.
Yeah, that's fun.
Similar to kind of what I was explaining to the Capital Planning Committee a couple of weeks back. So I guess, I'll just start saying, similar to a lot of other projects in Stow, that require kind of design and building and that sort of thing. The planning department's role in this project, as we came up, over the last couple of years, was really to figure out and identify the needs, to locate funding sources, to kind of build support for a project, work toward a vision, try to get everybody in town, all these things that we've been hearing, these needs and challenges, kind of into this concept idea for making improvements to Lower Village. It was Also then, what we did is hire a designer that would take those ideas and turn them into actual concepts and something that could be constructed and built. And then, of course, our contractor, who on this project was ET&L, was responsible for just taking that plan and actually constructing it.
Yep.
So just, that's, similar to, I think, a lot of other projects. In this particular project, the planning board kind of acted as the oversight committee, so to speak. They were the board that we kind of met with and regularly updated as we went forward. So back in 2016, when this really got legs, was when we were awarded $1 million grant from MassWorks. We worked on getting the plan up to snuff as quickly as possible from the time we got the grant up until, I believe, November of 2017. And it was at that time that we got on board with ET&L, gave them a notice to proceed, and then by April of 2018, we were in the ground in Lower Village. So our contractor ET&L, we were working on replacing the trunk line in Lower Village, and the core points of the project were always to do a few different things. They were to replace what we knew was an aging, deteriorated drainage system that was underground, so the trunk line traveling underneath the road. To improve the pedestrian, bike, and vehicle safety.
I apologize.
And to ease the congestion in Lower Village at peak times. So those were things we've all talked about. When we finally got going in
What were
that,
they gonna replace the drainage,
To
ease
replace-
the congestion, and what was the other one?
and to improve the pedestrian, bike, and vehicle safety down there. And so there's a lot of different ways that we've done that, and we can talk about that. But so things got going pretty well. We got through a good part of the summer. There are a couple overruns here and there, all within the contingency we had planned for. It wasn't until kind of as we took the turn into the fall that our contractor on the project started to be concerned on some of the grading inconsistencies. And so we worked with the designer on the project to try to figure out, okay, what's the issue in the surface, the proposed surface pavement of the road that is inconsistent in terms of grades. So we tried to work with them to get that fixed. Kind of persistent problems with that, and one of the concerns the planning board had at the time is if the slopes aren't right on the surface of the road, you have potential for ponding in places that you didn't expect it, for icing in the winter because the water is not moving quickly enough to the drainage system underneath, and eventually it just deteriorates the pavement. And so as time went on, we tried to work to figure out a solution to actually the paving problems on the road. This was in the fall. This was getting close to the time when we were expected to put the final course of pavement on. We still could not come to a point where we could find a solution that our designer could provide, and the board simply lost confidence on the project, especially after we had asked for some additional Chapter 90 funds to try to resolve the matter and put down the pavement that we needed to get to the final pavement, the final surface course, which is the section right now. The only final surface course that's been applied is from Bradley Lane to roughly the entrance to the post office. So that area that's nice and flat, that was what was supposed to be on the whole roadway.
Yep.
The planning board just did not have confidence that we were actually going to get the water to work in the right way. So that is when we decided to suspend the project. It's right around the time when we had raised all the structures thinking the project was over, realized that it wasn't going to get done in the way that we wanted to, and the last thing we wanted to do was come back 3 years later and say the road is failing, we need to do it over. So we suspended the project at that time. Since that time, we've been working to try to figure out exactly what the technical issues were with the road. We spent some time working with our designer on the project at the outset. We weren't able to come to an agreement with them, so over the last couple of months, we've worked with a peer reviewing engineer to help us understand some of the technical stuff. They helped us develop a scope, and just, I guess it was maybe a week or so ago, we hired a new design firm. I think it was 2 weeks now. Hired a new design firm. They're called Green International Affiliates. They're out of Westford. They have particular expertise in street design, and we've had, since that time, we had a kickoff meeting with them. They have provided us kind of a scope of work of things that they want to review. They seem to have a pretty solid handle on what they think could be done to address the problem. And we have a pretty good working relationship already with them, where they're going to try to define some alternatives for us to look at for the planning board to kind of address, to figure out, what's the best way to fix this in the most cost-effective manner. And so that's the big news, that we were finally happy to get somebody on board that could really get us to the finish line here. And so one thing I did have to share, if folks want to see it, is the anticipated design schedule here. So,
Before
you
we
want to
get,
pass it around?
before we get there, Jesse.
Yep.
Can you just remind us how much money we have spent on this project so far, and how much the taxpayers still have actually approved?
So in 2018, we had 4 different funding sources going into this project. We had $1 million from the MassWorks program. We had $400,000 that was committed from Chapter 90 over a few different years that the Highway Department had kept aside, knowing that this was in the future. We had $492,000 that was approved as a bond item at town meeting that year. I believe it was Article 51. And then we had, I think it was $42,800 in our sidewalk account that we applied to this project. We had typically used that account for various sidewalks across town, but this was the top priority. So those are the 4 baskets of funding.
Excuse me, Jesse, the town meeting warrant talked about $850,000 from MassWorks infrastructure, and that's what we voted.
Yep. And we were able.
It turned out it was 150 more.
So after we got the bids back after town meeting, the bids came in a little higher than we had expected. So we went back to MassWorks, and we knew that statutorily, for a town of this size, they were able to provide the town with $1 million. So we were able to work out to get an extra $150,000 towards the project. Yeah,
That's great.
yeah. So those were the different baskets of funding. So what is currently remaining of the project funds? There is $30,596 of Chapter 90 money that we can allocate to construction. Can't be used for design. And there is $63,455, maybe about $1,000 less than that now, but so about $63,000 at the moment that can be used. That was part of that bond item that can be used for design or construction. So that's kind of just the picture as we stand. So the MassWorks funds, those were the ones we used primarily for the drainage system. That's why they got depleted first, because that was the first thing we put in. So that was the big whack right off the bat. The sidewalk funds we've used. Sidewalk base courses are mostly in. There's a few pieces here and there that need to be updated to finish everything out. But so yeah.
Excuse me, and the drainage is fine. In other words, the money spent, the MassWorks money, we're good.
Yeah, so the underground drainage system, different than the surface drainage, which is
Yeah.
the issue that we're having at the moment.
Yes.
We have no reason to believe there's an issue with that.
Okay.
Nonetheless, we did ask our new designer to just to take a look at the size piping and everything and just give us a sense of where it's at. But everybody is in pretty good agreement that we've got nothing to worry about there, that the real issues that we're concerned with at the moment are those grades on the pavement itself. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got about $90,000 left. So what?
Yep.
So, you guys have any other questions about that so far?
So far, so good.
Okay.
So, do you want me to kind of
Yeah, just keep
with
going.
some idea? Okay, so
Tell us
so I
what
think
you know.
one of the things we wanted to make sure here is that obviously this road projects are technical in nature. So the question was, how can we make sure that we get it right on this last final time? And so one thing we are going to be doing is working with a peer review engineer, which is not something we expected that we would need to do. To be quite honest, when we hire engineers all the time, you've got your stamp, you've got your professional, and that's what you use. But here, being extra cautious, so some of that bond, some of the remaining money that we had allocated as part of the general project funds here for construction and everything, would like our peer reviewer just to take a look at this next set of plans and make sure that, yes, what you're looking at here, what you've been proposed by your next designer is really, they're going in the right direction. You know, that's the kind of, we just need a little bit more technical backbone to make sure that we're comfortable going ahead here. So that's one of the things we're doing to try to make sure we're on the right track. So we've gotten a design schedule here. At the very end, they provide some of their construction schedule. I think they're being, the designers being as liberal as they can be, given that they're still in the process of trying to understand some of the technical stuff. So they are looking at construction over, probably not beginning until early summer, but going through the core summer months.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm reading this
Yep.
right. So the actual construction, the bottom line, starting late June or whatever?
Yeah, yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, we had hoped that we would be able to start that earlier, but just given when we got them under agreement, it's just, that's just what it is.
Is what it
Yeah.
is.
Three more months from here, once they start?
Yeah, you know, their estimate was 16 weeks. Now, they've got a lot of different design alternatives to work through. So I think it makes sense for them to give us, and I hope it is, the worst-case scenario. And as we go through the alternatives and figure out exactly what the things are that need to be done, we can start to narrow down exactly what that construction schedule looks like in detail.
So can you elaborate a little bit of how you have reached the 489,000 for extra funding required to complete the project?
Yes.
Because, you know, when I just look at preliminary cost estimate on this, that's in a week or two from now.
So the way we came up with the 489 in particular, and where we came up with the $500,000 plug number. So I will try to walk you through this the best I can and stop me if it's not making sense. So we talked about the remaining 94,000 that we had. What I did from that point is try to figure out, okay, when we suspended the project, how much was left on the contract? And we took that number, we subtracted some of the underruns. There were some issues, and some aspects of the plan had quantities that were off, and we actually didn't need the amount of, let's say, 12-inch pipe that we thought we were going to need. So there are some savings there. And so when you take all those things together, the estimated balance to finish, let's say in December of this past year, would have been something like 155,000 about. So that's like a starting number there. And then what we tried to do was extrapolate based on all of the numbers that we know, from things that we know we wanted to look at, and potentially redesign the structure of the road, the surface, the potential tonnage of asphalt, and we made some estimates to try to understand what would it look like if we had to put a final surface course, match all the driveways, put in new curbing from that point at the post office down to White Pine Road. And so, you know, I itemized that out to the best I could, you know, kind of took some monthly averages on police details, you know, tried to get all of those numbers together. Then we applied some of that money that we had left over, the 94,000. We added a 15% contingency, which was something that our designer, the new designer, had suggested they might use, so I wanted to make sure that was in there since they were probably going to use it. And yeah, came out with a number of 489. So for the purpose of the warrant, we chose 500,000, given the kind of estimate that it was. So a plug number for sure, but kind of our best guess at this point. And so the plan is to, by April 17th, we expect to have the preliminary construction estimate, which is then something we hope that we can, you know, work with our peer reviewing engineer to take a look at, make sure it's in the realm of what our contractor was expecting in terms of the scope, you know, kind of bounce it around in a way, the best way that we can as we head towards town meeting. I know we're planning a public forum for the 17th as well, so we're hoping to have that number at that time to talk about something a little more complete. So that's, yeah. That's
So when you built your estimate, can we assume that this is the worst case scenario in cost that you have actually planned for? When you're talking
Yeah.
about redoing curbing, etc., that sounds like a significant additional work compared to just fixing a little bit of surface.
Yeah, so the reason, so yes, it was, I tried to be worst case. I'm not an engineer. So so to be specific on the curbing aspect, the reason why I included a good amount of money for potentially pulling out curbing to put it back in is that curbing that was installed in the fall was not meant to be, we knew that there were likely issues with the grades.
Yep.
So when that curbing goes in, you want to know exactly what those grades are going to be. So it's possible that some of it would come out, some of it would stay. I kind of, for the purpose of this estimate, just said we'll replace it all, and that's what I'll use as a number. I did the same for layout plans. I don't expect that we need to change or alter the easements that we asked for. But the first time around, we had a number close to 20,000 to develop these layout plans. Worst case scenario is we would have to. Based on the discussions I've had, it really doesn't seem like we're going in that direction, but nonetheless, when I created the estimate, I included that number. So there were a few specific areas where I just thought, I don't expect that we're going in that direction, but I can't rule it out, and so I'll add it for the sake of creating this estimate.
So in principle, from your view, you have included every contingency in your cost estimate. Let me ask the question maybe as a follow-up differently. You're not counting on the replenishing of the Chapter 90 funds that have gone into the project, 175,000, that's a different article, to actually then being your contingency fund if you run over.
Yeah, no, what we had in here as a warrant article was enough to handle, what we believed was enough to handle the entire thing from here on out. So we're not expecting any other thing to come through from somebody else, yeah. Thank you.
And you're still comfortable with ET&L is going to do the remainder of the work?
Yeah, ET&L was there at our kickoff meeting. I've been keeping them in the loop to the best as I could over the period of the winter when we were in limbo. They've been helpful in getting us the kind of information that our new designer would need to do their analysis, so I have every expectation that they'll be finishing it. Yep.
Wasn't there initially a question as to their role in this, as far as having not recognized earlier on that there was going to be a problem? So exactly where the communication is broken down between the engineer and the construction. So I assume that's been resolved to your
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of discussions about the, you know, what went wrong and when, and it was actually, you know, I think some of their hesitations in the plans and was what helped us kind of uncover kind of what we, you know, we had a sense that maybe we weren't comfortable with the final design and the surface, but they also have engineers and other folks on staff who said, like, we're just not getting consistent figures when we look at this, so that helped us understand where to look. But yeah, no, I mean, I think as far as the board's considered and everybody we've been working with, we're good with where we are with ET&L, yeah.
And as stated, so there's a separate article to reimburse about 1 year's worth of Chapter 90 money. Okay.
You want to just say what article number that is?
I'm sorry?
54.
As of now, it is Article 56, reimbursement to Highway Department for Chapter 90 funds.
Next page.
The number can change.
You guys have any other questions? Anybody from the gallery? All right.
On an easier subject, you want to just address the complete streets
Sure. Sure.
capital article while you're here? That's capital article number 12 at the moment.
Yep.
Thanks.
So, I don't think we discussed that the first time around, so.
Not here, no.
Yeah, so the Complete Streets capital article is for $50,000. If everybody recalls, a couple of years ago, we instituted the Complete Streets process. It's not a project, it's really more of a process, to be able to systematically understand where pedestrian, bike, and traffic improvements could be made throughout town. And we held a planning process. We had originally asked for $50,000 money that was reimbursable to do a planning process across town. We did that. Money has since been reimbursed. We developed a plan. We prioritized things from all over the town. We had some great participation in that from all sort of folks all throughout town. And we were able to apply for money in the first round of grant funding, and we were awarded $265,000. And for the projects that we were awarded, it was 3 different projects. One of them was to reconfigure the old Bolton Road, Great Road intersection, include a better bicycle slip lane there, and improve the way the sidewalk leads out to Old Bolton Road, with the future intention of finally connecting that piece of sidewalk between Stow Community Park and Route 117. The other project was to install a pedestrian signalized kind of a push-button signal at the one major crosswalk on Route 117 on the west of town at Harvard Road, which is where the sidewalk splits. And so people would be able to, you'd be able to clearly see people at dark hours there. And then the last project was to have bike lanes extend from Lower Village, where they currently will begin, all the way out to Town Center. And so those were the 3 projects we got funding for. So right now we're
What was
in
the other one? Bike lanes where?
bike lanes extending from Lower Village to Town Center.
Okay.
So right now what we're doing, I had asked for $50,000 last year, and the purpose of the money was so that we could advance some of these projects from the concept stage where they were developed in the plan to something that was actually buildable that you could get funding for and then implement. And so we got the funding for it, so we knew, okay, let's get this thing to shovel-ready status. So in this past year, we've been working with a couple of different firms to design the actual improvements and to do some of the base survey work that we would need to understand what it would take to get it done. So that's where we've been at. So it brings us to this year. The purpose of the request this year is twofold. The most important reason is that what we really need assistance with, and what we've certainly learned in Lower Village, is that the construction administration aspects of a project are crucial, especially in a town where we don't necessarily have engineers on staff. We really require people to be able to be our eyes and ears and speak for the town as best they can. And so part of that funding would go towards overseeing the Old Bolton Road, Harvard Road, and Great Road projects to ensure that they're built according to the plan. Now, some of that we don't yet know exactly. We've got a proposal out. We're going to have an exact number for that. The remaining funds of that $50,000, we had a lot of projects that were not funded as part of our initial scope there, and things that people really wanted to see done in town. We've talked with the committee. We've identified a couple of potential priority projects that we could at least be advancing, that wouldn't just be sitting on the shelf over the next year or so, so that when we're ready to reapply to this program, we have projects that can actually be implemented. It's just kind of a constant tension between wanting to apply and yet not having the projects really at a shovel-ready status, even though you've identified them. So that is the purpose of the request.
Just for clarification, that is not reimbursable, the 50K.
The 50K is not reimbursable. Yep. It's more of a leveraging. Yep.
And so the 275 or whatever you said that's going to be fully spent on those projects. Not the 50 will not be reimbursed at all.
That's correct. Yeah, the 265 is for the construction.
65.
Yep. And the 50 is really for us to be able to monitor the construction and make it happen. Yeah. So and people
I don't have my list in front of me, but
Yeah.
I seem to remember that's on your capital plan for the next several years anyway. I don't know if it was all 5, but as far as asking for the 50 each year, that's the plan.
Yeah, the Complete Streets, there's a funding request in there every year. Now, because of the way the capital plan is, you need to put a number there. Can I say every year that we're going to be in a situation where we need 50,000? Probably not. I mean, there'll probably be some years where that number fluctuates down. It just depends on where we're at. I think the message there was that we've identified at least what we think is a good model for being able to respond to some of the consistent traffic and pedestrian safety complaints around town. We have a funding program that has, reasonably been able to use as a leverage, and so as long as it's still going, we kind of want to keep up the momentum. And so the number may change, but that's the thinking behind that request.
Okay.
Can I ask a totally different question?
Yeah.
Article 46, how much is the planning board and involved in the amendment bylaws for lake boom rules and regulations?
I have had zero involvement on that, but yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thanks very much.
You're
Anybody
welcome.
else have any other questions? Ryan?
I think I have some of these questions at our selectmen's meeting last week. Town administrator answered a few of them, especially about the reimbursability and the constant replenishing of the Complete Streets project. Either that, it was covered in the town administrator's report, it was covered in the liaison report. I urge you guys to review our selectmen's meetings on Stow TV, YouTube. Let's face it, you don't have to, if for your focus, you only have to listen to the town administrator, maybe our liaison reports where I bring back your questions.
Good tip. Thank you. Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Have a good night.
All right, so we'll start at the top. The way we typically do this, we read out the articles. Anybody wants to, has any comments, questions, please jump in. So Article 1's the report of the selectmen and the officers and committees. Article 2 is the report on the social committees. Article 3 is the wage and salary schedule for fiscal year 2019.
I had a question on that, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's in here or in the correspondence. I couldn't quite find it though quickly. Has there been a resolution on the police chief's request?
Yes, I believe there is, and but I'm not sure where it is in here. I see the chair of the selectmen nodding.
Oh,
I have the same answer you have. Yes, it has been resolved. I don't remember the number, and I'm sure it's in the budget.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah,
I can
I
probably.
just couldn't see him.
It's
Okay.
probably not in the
Been
warrant. It's
resolved and
probably.
agreed to, and he's staying on.
He is staying on for at least a year. Like any negotiation, the parties met in the middle.
Question answered. Thank you.
I can actually.
That's okay. I couldn't find it in the schedule.
Yes, I can tell you from my conversations with the town administrator that it was resolved.
Good. I'm glad he's staying on. Good for us.
Okay. So, moving through here. So number 4 is the general budget.
I have a comment.
Sure.
My name is Kathleen Pavlicek. I'm a member of the Randall Library Friends.
Okay.
And I'm just here to show general support for the requests that the library trustees have made, both in the budget and in the capital planning budget. The Randall Library is a valuable resource in town, and the town needs to continue its support for the library, especially now that the trustees are beginning to bring forward a plan for a renovation project sometime in the foreseeable future. And that's my comments for the evening.
Thank you.
This is the time to talk.
Well, that's a-
Library?
Well,
hi.
that's on the budget.
Just give it to
On
Brian.
the budget, okay. What? I'll talk about the warrant.
Yeah. What's this?
Is this yours?
That's fine. Thanks. Hot potato. Okay. So Article 5 is a reserve fund that the Finance Committee administrates. It's traditionally been $70,000 and has been for recent memory. I can't remember the last time it changed. The revolving funds for the fees, the inspection fees, I'm transferring
Jim?
those. Yes.
Did you address the reserve fund, or
Oh, yeah.
maybe you would want to, but.
Yeah, go back.
Um,
Article 5, the reserve fund.
One of the things we've been working on in the last couple of years is really tightening up the budgets, finding actual expenditures rather than just requests, and how much money is left over at the end of the year in each item. And we're trying to tighten that up some, obviously to reduce the revenue raise in the front end. So we've become concerned that if it gets tight, that the reserve fund may not be adequate in some year. At $70,000, it's 1% of the budget, less than 1%. So we did actually, late in the process, ask for an increase to 100,000. Town administrator informed us that we were late in the process, but also pointing out that we have not spent the full 70 recently, or any time, other than when it's taken for snow and ice. So it's, we'll probably revisit that next year, I would think.
I think we've done it.
Just don't want to be in a position of asking everyone to tighten things up too much and then not having the adequate backstop.
Yeah.
The,
Chair recognizes Brian Burke,
thank you.
Selectman.
The judiciousness of the Finance Committee with respect to setting appropriate reserve fund levels is commendable, but do we have a historic idea of what the reserve fund as a percentage of the budget has been in past years?
Well, it's been 70,000 for at least, since I've been on the committee, 8 years. Probably, if you ask.
It was 15.
Yeah,
What's that?
maybe 20.
It was 70 when I got on
Yeah,
the Fincom 2005.
2005, so it's been for 15 years.
70 to 2005.
So,
It's a long time.
So in terms of percentage
It's
of
about 1%.
budget, though?
well, the budget was $15 million around in 2010, and now it's 30 million. So, as a percentage of the budget, yeah, it's going down. But that said, Bill made a persuasive argument, and frankly, it's his decision, that we haven't exhausted those funds any time in the last at least 5 years. Go ahead, Chair.
I think it's a fair.
David?
I think it's a fair point that, $70,000 becomes obviously a far smaller percentage over that length of time. But I'd love to take a look at the drivers that you've seen for use of the reserve fund. Do you have any typical sources that keep coming to the well? My experience has been that since we, under our current public safety chiefs, the old drivers of use of the reserve fund have gone away. The old drivers were overtime, unpredicted overtime. And I haven't heard that you have, and maybe I'm wrong, I haven't heard you had a problem with that.
No, I can tell you anecdotally, and I'm just sort of flipping through, I have the last couple of years, it's almost always veterans benefits that are, so a veteran moves to town.
Right.
The town expends those funds.
Truly something unaffordable.
Yeah, and then we get reimbursed 75% from the state. This year we spent $25,000, was it at Hale?
It was both, I think, the Hale and Center.
Hale and Center, they had some repairs that were there.
And then we have had to for the highway department when their stuff has truly broken down.
Yep,
There's
so
no
last year
funds
we,
left into that. So, but I think the overall concern is, as budget becomes closer projection of actual, you don't have as much leeway in there. And 70,000 to buffer that type of leeway is pretty small.
So in 1996, the reserve fund was 80,000? In the year 2000, it was 90,000, and I think it's fluctuated around that. I didn't go back further, but that's just a historical perspective, so we're down to 70,000. Just to,
Yeah, it's been 70 every year that I can.
yeah, it's for as long as I can remember that.
The only personnel salary kind of issues I can remember on that are if there's a retirement or something like that, which is generally pretty small. We had a new oven for Hannah last year and a couple other repairs there. Have been bigger drivers the last few years. But overall, it's last few years have been pretty light. So, leaving
Okay.
at 70 this year, but we'll revisit that.
All right, well, thank you for that discussion. Anybody else have any other comments? It is noted that as the budget has grown significantly, that the reserve fund hasn't. So it's something we'll take into consideration before next budget season.
In a timely
In a
manner.
timely manner, in the appropriate time, so we don't get our hands slapped again. So Article 6 is the revolving funds for inspection fees, where we're gonna transfer those to the general fund. Same thing with Article 7, which are, this is our ambulance, actually is a revenue generator for the town. Let's see, there's other, I'm gonna move through these pretty quickly. The Swift 911 notification system for $2,600. Article 9 is for weights and measures, it's $1,000. These are all part of the consent calendar, so we typically go through these very quickly, and we vote on them in bulk at town meeting. Article 10 is for almost $6,300, which transfers money from the conservation fund. Same thing from the Wetlands Protection Fund in Article 11, that's about $3,000. Article 12, $2,500, again, adding to the conservation fund. On Article 13, it's a significant amount of money, almost $35,000 to update the property valuations in town. Article 14, this is the town clerk's town records binding and repair for $200. This is a transfer. Highway, road, machinery, and private ways. We're going to be transferring money so that the town can repair certain roadways. On Article 16, highway road construction, we're going to be spending $283,000 on highway road construction. Article 17, $6,000 for hazardous waste collection. Article 18 is municipal solid waste, so this is stuff for the town employees and operations. Article 19 is to pay for our public nurse. Article 19, we fund the Stow Cultural Council every year, and so this is money that's applied to that endeavor. And Article 21, we spend about $5,000 to light up our the town with different lights and so forth for the holidays. Article 22 is the Employee Educational Incentive Program. So this is a program that funds, this is money above the salary that employees make if they have certain degrees. I forget exactly what it is, but if you have an associate's degree, you get a couple $1,000. If you get,
5%?
it's 5%, that's right.
Bachelor 10%.
Bachelor's 10%, and if you have an advanced degree above that, it's 15%. It excludes the town administrator, the police chief, and the fire chief.
I think so.
Oh no, the town accountant, those three people. And it's notable that that's going down this year. I think we haven't looked closely at it. I imagine it's because of some retirements. Article 23, so that's $140,000. I think it was about 150 something last year. Article 23, the audit of financial records, about $12,000 for that. there's a transfer for money to the OPEB trust fund, so the OPEB is the other post-employment benefits. And this article transfers that money into the trust fund. The trust fund's set up to pay for benefits to retired town employees, things like healthcare that are not part of the pension.
Chairman?
Yes, sir.
My understanding, we have engaged a consultant on this, and we're, I think, awaiting a report. Do we know if there's been any input from that,
We have got,
of course, in terms of determining this number?
so we did get the report. I circulated it.
Yeah.
So, not surprisingly, well, maybe perhaps a little surprising, not so surprising for me, Bill, the town administrator, was pretty spot on with the number to fund the OPEB, this unfunded liability, which again is not a promise. We're not statutorily obligated to pay for it, but we pay for this as the town for these as a benefit to the town employees that have retired, and it is a liability that the Finance Committee in particular was concerned about, mostly out of, I'm not sure what the word is, we just didn't know, there was a lot of unknowns. So the town administrator engaged a consultant for $7,500, and he came out just about where he suggested. I think Bill is still tinkering with it or working with the consultant, but effectively it was $200,000 was recommended to be put towards pre-funding OPEB, and that money, I think he was going to increase it by, I think, 2% every year, and that was projected for the duration to be able to pre-fund it. And I think we're also going to be paying $1,500 a year, if I remember Bill telling me that correctly, to look at the actuarial tables and the mix of town employees and other costs, and adjusting that so that we do stay on track. Anybody have any questions?
So maybe you can comment, what was last year's funding?
What was last year's? Was it 150,000? Do you remember?
I thought it was less than
I think it's 2.
Was it 200? And so we're doing 235 this year, it looks like.
239.
239? Okay.
He, that was my memory. He tinkered with the assumed discount rate, lowered it, which
Yeah.
is more conservative,
Right.
and that raises the annual determined contribution to 239.
Okay, good. Thank you, Chair Selby, for providing that context. Does that answer your question, Peter?
Yeah, and I did get this, but he had said it wasn't complete yet.
Yeah,
Substantially complete.
Yeah. I think what he hadn't done is actually say what
Very
the number.
much like
Yeah,
what
say what the
he's
number
using.
was.
Yeah, you're right.
Using a 4.18 discount rate instead of 8%.
Seems a little more realistic. Okay. Article 25 is to transfer money from MWPAT to fund the loan. So people may that's for $55,000 or almost $56,000 a year. As a resident of Harvard Acres, somebody who's taken advantage of this program, people may remember that the private water regime in Harvard Acres failed, and the company was actually so broke that they couldn't even file for bankruptcy themselves. And thankfully, Kate Hogan and the state, and I'm sure the selectmen and Bill Wrigley were involved, got low interest loans for everybody in the town, and so the town charges a nominal amount of money to administrate the loans, which basically go on as a betterment on our tax bills. So this is not a cost to the town and a huge benefit to the people in those neighborhoods, and this is taking the money that's collected and paying back that loan on an annual basis. Article 26 is focused on the water system expenses, so the town has a municipal water system, and that money is related to making sure that the town employees and everybody else, the First Parish Church is actually on that as well, so it makes sure that that water is safe for everybody to drink. Article 27 is for the EDIC, or the Economic Industrialization Commission. They have a very tiny budget of $1,000 a year. Article 28 is the Lake Boone Water Quality Remediation. I think that one's self-explanatory. There's $28,000 to help remediate water quality for Lake Boone. Article 29 deals with planning board, engineering, and consulting, and master plan expenses. So this is stuff that Jesse Steadman, who was just here, will be updating that master plan and needs those consulting funds to do that. Article 30 is the community preservation expenses. So the town of Stow has been part of the Community Preservation Act since its existence.
2001,
Since
yeah.
2001 is when it started. So those funds, we self-tax those funds at 3%. So that's an additional tax on our tax bills, if you look for that. And that money goes into certain buckets of money, certain accounts for certain buckets of expenses. I believe it's recreation,
You
conservation.
will see that in Article
Okay.
29.
Oh, okay, the next ones will go over. Okay, so these are this bill refers to the expenses for wages and other things that do not come out of CPA funds.
No, this comes out of CPA.
Oh, does
funds.
come out of
This
CPA.
is-
Okay.
This is out of CPA funds, administrative bin.
Okay, thanks. So they can spend a certain amount of these funds to administrate the program. It pays for those administrative duties. So as we move on to Article 31, there's certain allocations of money that go into each of these buckets. The buckets are preservation of historic resources, preservation of open space, and then affordable housing. And $100,000 is being transferred into each one of those. So that's the end of the consent calendar. When you go into town meeting, those things will be voted in a block unless anybody determines they want to pull one of them out for a vote. So before I move on, should I just pause there? Okay. All right, so Article 32 focuses on the capital requests, and they are very significant this year.
If you want to say something, this would be,
Right this
Um,
minute?
yes.
Well, wait till I call it out.
Okay.
So, we'll go through them one by one. So the assessor is updating the system to do assessor things. So that's $40,000. She has also asked for, or that department or committee has asked for an additional $19,000 for the server to handle that.
Do we, and maybe Jim will know that, is that the full cost of a server for this new system?
I thought it was a little bit more than 40 for the software and the server, but I don't have my notes in front of me.
Well, it's 40 for the software, it's 19 for the
59.
server.
$59,000 for both.
Yeah, that's, as far as I know, Brian, that's the full cost.
Okay, thanks.
The building department has requested upgrading the heating system at the old fire station, the one right by the library. That actually, for the Fincom members and the people in the audience, that has gone up to $60,000. So, so I have the updated version here.
I believe the net cost is still gonna be $47.5, if I read that correctly.
It's a
wasn't it?
reimbursement.
I thought the net cost was gonna be 14.
No, it's still in the building department.
Yeah, for the old fire station.
Yeah. Did you?
Okay, so
I thought,
14, so the 47.5 wasn't,
yeah,
there were other things in that. Okay. I just saw that the move up to 60 is gonna be directly offset back to 47.5. So the net is 14?
it was as of a few weeks ago for the
Okay.
old fire station.
clearly it has changed.
But maybe that has changed, maybe, I don't have my notes. from
As
last
of
capital planning.
12:06 today, I got a note from Maureen saying that it should be listed as 60.
Yes.
And the reason being is that the cost with the recaptured funds will be 60,000. I don't quite understand this
The cost
explanation.
with the recaptured funds would be 47.5.
Yes.
The article should be listed as 60, is what her email said.
Okay, well, we'll have to find out the delta.
And this is from Maureen to Steve today, which is what?
Yeah.
Should be looked at 60. I didn't realize he was recapturing funds. The cost with the recaptured funds will be 47.5. You sure you're not thinking of the police cruiser that's gonna be down to 14?
Could be. Very
I
similar
think,
numbers.
I'm actually thinking
I
that,
am at that age.
We could all be wrong.
I'm looking at this and I'm wondering if we should just get some more clarification, because I think the numbers are reversed. But we'll come back to that. So it's somewhere between 47.5 and 60,000. Hopefully closer to 47.5.
Well, it's gonna say 60.
We're gonna come back to that, because I think the numbers got transposed in the email. Let's just take it offline. Because what Steve Jelenic, the chair of the capital committee, says doesn't match what was emailed to us for the suggested language, which makes me feel like 47.5 was right and 60,000 was wrong.
But I think Peter is right. The numbers I was thinking of was the police car.
Okay.
Which happens to have
It's
similar
just
numbers.
starting right at 47.
Right, which happens to have similar numbers, and I've transposed them all. So,
Okay. We'll come back to that.
but on the old fire station, I would trust Steve Jellicoe.
Yes. For the cemetery committee, they've requested $25,000. I believe it's to repair a wall.
No, I don't know what this is, so
Is that?
I am
Does anybody
curious what
recognize
this is.
Apparently they're not gonna proceed with fixing the wall.
Okay.
And this money, I believe, is from the sale of Watts account, right? So it'll be an appropriation.
I thought the fixing of the wall was the CPC project that got withdrawn.
Yeah.
So we don't know what this one is.
I can tell you it's not for the fixing of the walls.
Right.
They've decided not to do that. GH was here just a half an hour ago.
I know, I don't know.
He does have a separate, I thought it was a $25,000 item.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's what
what
it
we're
is.
talking about.
For landscaping. I thought that was
For
a
landscaping.
Yeah, it is.
around the gift of a gazebo. And
Oh.
that's from sale of lots.
The gazebo,
No, I remember this now. So this $25,000 is to move it and place it and make it look nice,
Exactly.
correct? Yeah.
how much was it, didn't the gift cover that too?
I don't believe so. I specifically remember either Bill Wrigley, the town administrator, or Steve Jelenic, the capital planning person, telling me that the gift was not cost-free, and that we were gonna have to either pay to transport it and make it look nice, so. We'll clarify that in our comments in the warrant. The number 5 under Article 32 for capital items is the backhoe for the highway department. That was on the capital list and expected. They also have $14,000 they're asking for a waste oil burner, so that'll be good to get rid of the oil that they get.
Kind of.
Plus it heats up the.
It heats up. Pretty sure it heats up the their
This will pay
the
off
garage
in a
too.
year or two.
Yeah.
That said, I imagine that said it's against the cost of disposing the waste oil,
Yes.
if there are other means.
Along with
Effective.
buying heating oil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It heats the garage too.
Heat the garage. This pays itself off within a very short period of time.
Okay.
And I think the last one they have was, or they currently have is 25 years. It's outlasted its lifetime by 10 or 15 years.
Article, or number 7 under Article 32, the Lake Boone Dam, the Dam is in need of some repairs. The 87,000 is to have engineers come out and design. It's essentially design funds, is my understanding. Somebody else correct me if I'm wrong. Number 8 is from the Highway Department. They're going to be resurfacing October Lane, so they periodically go out and do different roads. It's October Lane's turn. They're also going to be doing Wedgewood Road, which is right near there off of Harvard. Number 10 is for Stow TV. We're buying a HD video server for $40,000. And there's number 11 is also a video on demand system for $10,000. Yes, Liaison, can you add some color here? Because I thought that they were.
That's why I was kind of surprised at the cost of the server for the assessor's office. On the other hand, I don't know anything about electronics, so you can put any numbers here. But these will be revenue neutral.
That's what I thought.
Because they're going to come out of PEG funds.
Right.
That might change. That's something that the Finance Committee should keep an eye on, because the FEC is talking about modifying that rate sharing program. But the LACAC is attuned to that possible development and is working anticipatorily in case it goes through. But as of now, these are revenue neutral costs. And the video on demand, I don't know how much in the weeds you want me to get to. That anticipates the day when we don't have any public access television stations, because we don't have cable TV.
Right.
Because everything is going to be streaming over the internet.
That's right. Thank you for that context.
Well, I hope I wasn't too wordy.
Not this time.
I'll do them.
Always colorful. Always colorful.
The night is young.
I'll have to leave in 5 minutes.
We heard about Jesse Steadman from planning when he was here about the $50,000 for the complete streets, and apparently what we thought was a program that was going to be completely funded by grants does actually cost us money to plan these things. So it's a little bit of surprise, I think, to many of the members of the Finance Committee. But so number 13, for the police department, they are getting a $47,235 police car. This is part of the regular plan that they did not. They basically replace a car every year, and they skipped last year. So that's where the 47 comes from.
Would be appropriate to highlight the discussion we were having here earlier with regard to the real cost is going to be.
Yeah, so the real cost, they were capturing a lot of money from other unexpended capital items. So I think it's significantly less. If I remember, it's like 15 grand or something.
In my notes.
14,000?
Yeah, they have
So-
like 30 something already.
So the net cost is around 14,000, even though it's listed at 50.
So between the 2 years of skipping last year, they get about 90,000, what we normally spend, and we're spending 14. So, very good job by them. Can't do that too often, but we got away with it last year.
Yep. It's worth noting that our public safety does a good job of managing their budget. Number 14, perhaps some members of the library committee would like to speak in support of this. It's for the renovation design. It's $40,000.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I would like to, first of all, I have to ask.
Could you just say your name
Oh,
and
yes,
where you live?
Barbara Wolfenden.
Okay.
I am a trustee, but can I speak as private citizen?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, because we the trustees are still grappling with some of these issues. We're still waiting for data to come in on air quality. So some of these items are still to be determined, but I'm here to ask the Fincom to support this warrant article for the, just to back up a little bit, little rationale, little emotional rationale that we've been trying to get to this point for several years, and we all know the history. We did not get a space at Pompo when at one point we thought we were going to. Then we've been told that we were on a track for getting support, and now it looks as if we may not by all partners, people in the town governance. I don't know that. I'm just here to ask that you consider seriously our request. We have safety issues in the library. As I say, the air quality issue has not been resolved. The handicapped access is still unresolved. We have people who have to park in the normal parking space and then go all the way around the front entrance, and then there's a ramp on the other side to get in. Secondly, the elevator is ancient and could fail at any time. But the staff security is also an issue. Secondly, the structure of the building, the old building is fine. We still have leaks from rain. We still have problems with heat, and they're working on it. They've done a good job, but we have very cramped working conditions and poor traffic flow, and not enough really room for the adult areas to make it a comfortable place. The library is not just for adults. It's not just a babysitting place for after-school Hale kids, but it's for everybody for all kinds of reasons, and we do not offer them an adequate environment right now. It's dark and it's cramped, and we just need more space, and the project would provide an answer to many of these issues. Thank you for listening.
Well said, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any other thoughts or comments from?
Oh, I would like to add one more thing, that the library offers a place for everyone in the town that is not offered anywhere else. The COA closes at 5 or something.
3:30.
When is it?
Well, the office is closed at 3:30.
Well, I
They're
mean,
open 4.
in terms of space.
Yeah.
So it really is a very democratic, lower D institution in our country, in our city, town.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Well put. Appreciate that. Does the liaison have anything to share? Oh.
I was just wondering
go
what
ahead,
you said the number was 40,000
This is for design funds.
for the future project.
That's right.
Okay.
And typically, design funds are, well, they're typically 10%, but that seems really low for what we anticipate the renovation might cost.
This is concept design?
It's a concept design,
Oh,
thank you.
concept design. If I wasn't dashing out, I would say that was an awful low number for all
Yes.
the problems that have just been listed.
Oh, you know what, if I remember correctly, and Peter or some of the other members that are Board of Selectmen members, I seem to remember they're really refreshing the former plans, and I think that's why this is partly a smaller number. Is that your recollection?
Well, not exactly. They said that it should be a standalone number. Went back to the architect from last time and asked them what they would charge, but they supposedly that's a standalone number for concept design. I mean, one of the questions that came up the other night at capital planning is what are we gonna be asking them to do? What is the goal? We mentioned some outside things, some handicap things, but I'm still grasping what is different than the other report that we had a few years ago, and what, the library's not sure what they're asking for. I mean, I know some of this always gets answered in the design process, but maybe you can talk about, you know, what you see on the other side of this, where it to go forward.
Well, as I said, the
I know you were very specific on
Yeah.
the handicap entrance, the elevator.
in the space
Clearly.
for, we need carols for studying. We need,
Can I make a comment?
oh, please do, please do.
I think the bottom line is that the building that exists was designed in the 70s, and we're now dealing with providing a library that's good in the 21st century, because so many things have changed that the space and the design of the old building, even if it didn't have all the deficiencies that we think are there, is really inadequate for how libraries are used now. And it doesn't provide the space that the librarians and the public needs to separate the children's activities from adult space and the new ways people use the library. So the building that exists doesn't really meet the needs of the library today. And the design phase is a necessary first step to get the building changed.
I mean, we are working toward identifying a central message, which I think I've kind of summarized. But it's very difficult to come up with one single slogan for something like a library.
You don't need a slogan.
Well, you know, if you want to
Might
compact
help.
everything.
A concept.
A concept.
But yeah, if you could describe maybe the concept,
Yeah.
and what would the second floor, or the second floor of the, if you replace the new part, I mean, that's one major deficiency, right? That's totally inefficient in that spot.
It would be, it would
What
have,
spaces do you need for the going forward?
well, we need space for a desk upstairs to monitor children and also patrons who come in and go upstairs. Right now, there is really no place for a desk, literally. We need windows. This is hard to defend maybe because you could say, well, that's just aesthetic, but our town considers the library as almost a symbol. I mean, we have it on our logo, our old library is, and I don't think we're paying enough attention to it, keeping it as modernized as it should be in all kinds of ways. And I think Melissa would be a better person to describe, and we're going to try to get this down to some very specific improvements, but it has to do with spacing of bookshelves, portioning off children's areas so that adults have their quiet area.
Which is why we need a design, because we have, we have the concept that we need to change these things, but we can't show you this is what it's gonna look like because we need to do the design work, and that's why we're asking for the funds.
And we do, I mean, I'm speaking I'm not speaking for the trustees, but I'm hoping we can piggyback off our earlier design largely, because there was a lot of work done, and not waste that amount of effort.
But it is a 7-year-old document, so it obviously would have to be updated.
It would have to be, right.
Yeah, for cost at least.
If nothing else.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Would we expect that 40,000 to get us to a cost estimate?
Oh, apparently we do.
Okay.
Linda?
I'm a little lost in the conversation. So is this for a tear down and rebuild, a new section, or redesigning what's existing there?
No, it would be tear down the
Okay.
old section.
The old section.
The 1970s.
1974 section.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 43
Which I think we've heard-
It's inefficient.
Yes.
Which I've heard.
It wasn't a remodel, it was a tear down.
Yeah, I've heard somewhat persuasively, I heard this, I don't want to speak for the committee, that, you know, the amount of upkeep is almost equaling what it would cost to actually replace it.
They do have some
That's-
specific
I think
numbers on that.
Yes, I think that argument could be made.
Yeah.
It was just, during the conversation, I wasn't sure whether it was tear down,
Yeah.
or whether it was redoing some of the spaces that was there. That was just a clarification point.
Pete, did you want to share something? Or can I recognize Chairman
Sure.
Salvi?
Yeah, he's probably.
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna just say, the question of capital planning is gonna be wrestled. We haven't made a recommendation on this item.
Okay.
The question of capital planning is gonna be wrestling with, is gonna be, well, with every project, is gonna be, is it a need versus a want? And even if it's a need, why this year? Because it's that kind of a year that every project has got to meet that test.
Mhm.
And I think on the library project, that last question, why this year, is going to be the challenge that we're going to wrestle with. I think it's hard to argue that the library trustees couldn't make better use of new space for programmatic reasons. It's also hard to argue that, you know, the building is what it is. It was built in 1975 or 76. It's typical of construction from that period. Plywood, brick facade, felt in between the wood and the brick, and not much else. The handicap access, I think we can say, is more theoretical than it is in fact.
It's very, very apropos to the 1970s
Right.
approach.
All of that makes it a good idea, arguably, but the part that is difficult to wrestle with, and I would just urge you to ask the same question, is, so why this year and not next year?
Right.
Most of the argument on that comes down to the existing structural condition, and opinions vary on that. The building inspector would say, has said, is not aware of significant structural problems at the building. It is what it is for that period. The indoor, it is not a sick building, from what we know. There has been one indoor air quality test where conditions were likened to outside. There were slightly elevated levels of 2 forms of fungus. That's it. There had been a problem with underground HVAC ducts, which obviously is a very bad idea. No one would construct a building that way now. Those were closed off, I think, 4 years ago. Now, there is another IAQ report, indoor air quality report, being done right now, so we'll see what that says. But that's the question that we're going to be wrestling with, and I would urge you to think about the same thing.
And just to, maybe add a little color to the Chair of Selectmen's commentary here is into it is all of this, just looking at the design phase in the context of capital request, 40,000 is a pretty small number. It actually pales in a conversation with regard to the HVAC system for this building, which is about 850,000. If I would be trying to reduce capital spending this year, that would be my prime target for reduction out of the essential things that we have.
So, but that presupposes that the HVAC changes in this building do not need to be done right away.
Correct. I don't know. I really haven't seen that same type of ordinance. But the bigger picture out of it is there is a range of big capital projects. This would be a big capital project for the town to redo the library. We, I think, all recognize that there will be, in the near future, a capital project for the high school. It will be a very, very significant capital project for the town. And it has to do with at what point in time and how many overlapping bonds for various different projects you can be running. If all of these are just assessed as an independent way of bonding and engaging into these type of activities, if a high school project comes on, it will lead to a very significant tax increase in the town. And that set the stage for, you know, how we bond and length of bonds we anticipate in a, I would say, 5 to 10 year plan if you're building into that capacity of absorbing a high school bond coming down the road. That is the bigger picture to me, at least. That is a very important way of thinking about these type of projects. If you want to do a library, and I'm not saying we do, but if you want to do a library, you want to do it fairly quickly, but you do not want to bond it for a long period of time.
If I could add one thing on that, the superintendent of schools came to one of our recent meetings and indicated, take this for what it's worth, it's just a statement at the Board of Selectmen meeting, that, you know, their statement of intent obviously was, their notice of intent obviously was not accepted this year. They would not expect the school project, I think this goes with what you're saying actually, they would not expect the school project to come online for another 7 to 8 years.
That was the same type of interaction that the finance committee had with her.
Okay.
And as a consequence of that, you could actually anticipate looking at, as we're paying off our debt,
Right.
you know, how things are being played out. You have some leeway in playing, so long you don't put a lot of small items that actually are going to extend into that period of time. So length of bonding as we go forward in that anticipation is actually becomes crucial in when that big item hits you. You know, have you saved enough on debt payment to allow for that big increase?
We start, especially if you assume you can stretch out any project, maybe, especially that size, maybe 3 years through bond anticipation notice.
Yep.
You hope that the real debt isn't going to hit until the end of the 2020s. And then if you look at our debt schedule, fortunately, in around 2031, presently, we start seeing a significant drop. This is the game we were playing 10 years ago with 3 projects that were coming online then. We managed to play it successfully then, maybe we'll play it successfully again. So,
Except that the price tag was around 10 million, and the one for the school will probably be like 30 million.
not just for us.
The price tag for the library won't be 10.
Well, maybe.
You would anticipate the high school project is probably going to be somewhere between 100 and 140 million.
Right, yeah.
Right.
And as a consequence of that, Stow's portion of that is significantly higher. You know, you're looking at a much bigger.
In 8 years. That's got.
In current dollars, you are looking at something like that, but that puts the perspective in what Mr. Salvi is saying in the context of, you know, previous project. This would be a very big project, you know.
So you're saying basically with the library, if you're going to do it quick and get it over. If you think you're going to do it eventually, do it.
I would say that if we are doing a library, it goes to bonding on the fire truck, bonding on the Lower Village. You know, these smaller projects need to be bonded, you know, for a short period of time.
We've made that recommendation informally to the town administrator, and he's
2027 to 2029 is when you actually need to start building up your anticipation.
Right.
All right. So let's run through the rest of these unless anybody has any other thoughts. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the school district has a bunch of repairs. Number 16 on Article 32 is for air conditioning repairs, $13,000. They have $12,000 for a radio repeater system. Number 18 is a security system upgrade. They're going to be adding cameras, more cameras, which was recommended from I believe that the school district did a security study, and this was recommended. So they're doing that at Center, they're doing that at Hale, and then they also need to replace a carpet at the Hale School. And I guess, so that's the end of the capital items as they are right now. I guess I'd point out that, in my recollection, this list is somewhat fluid because again, the, capital planning has not made recommendations yet, and there's always sort of some changes that come out. Would you guys agree? Cap liaison and, yes, okay. Perhaps somebody could add up what that is, but the last time I checked, it was about 2 million. Capital items, is that right, Peter?
You haven't gotten through
We
those
haven't,
two.
yeah, they've separated out.
These are all the small articles that you've just gone through. You haven't gone through the 3 big articles.
Oh, forgive me. Okay.
So those are.
Right, that's, thank you for pointing that out. So,
Yeah, the remaining items are nearly 2 million.
okay. So,
Except for what we just said, in
we
the
got
fire truck, the HVAC, and,
we've got some baked goods from our. I have brought, don't mind if I do? Sure. Enjoy your daughter's baking.
Thank you.
I hate to interrupt, Mr. Chair, but I have brought food for the mind as well as the body. DH is there, and he has some clarification on that capital request for the cemetery. If you care to hear it, or it's not too late.
Yep, we'll just wait for the gallery to clear.
Yeah.
Would you like to help yourself to Cookie?
I could have had it all coming up the stairs. Or the elevator would have been easier too, but.
Okay.
You need me closer, this is good enough?
Yeah, sure, come on out.
Oh, boy, here we go, huh?
Get you on tape.
Yeah, that's not one of my favorite things.
Can you clarify your $25,000, please, for landscaping?
Yep. That money is coming out of the cemetery sales of lots money. We have to go in front of the town meeting to be able to get that money out of that account.
Okay.
And we're using that for a project which I guess we call it the landscape improvement project. And what it's gonna end up being is we have over 400 feet of a 6-foot path going from one end of the cemetery, the newer part, to the other end. There's some question marks about a gazebo that we're having. That gazebo is a gift. It's a 20 by 20 gift of $30,000. We're gonna be paying out of our perpetual care accounts or any other article money. We will pay for the slab.
Okay. So it encompasses the preparation. Do you have to pay to transfer it too?
What's that?
You have to pay to transfer the gazebo too, or?
It's being built by
Oh.
the Amish out in Pennsylvania.
That's right.
It took a while for that to come about because we made some changes and a few other things. They will haul that in. The timing was very good because we got some cut cost, free shipping, the group people coming in. We don't have to pay prevailing wages for them because they don't allow that through their organization and stuff like that.
They do HVAC work? So the 25,000 includes the path you just said and the slab for the gazebo?
It may not, the slab is gonna be out of another account.
Okay, so
That
this,
it has, the 25,000 is for trees, shrubs, or anything else that we can find for that pathway.
okay, and that's coming out of the sale of lots accounts? So
That
it's
comes
just
out of the
a
sales of lot
transfer,
accounts, yep.
Revenue neutral to us.
Yep, we
Yeah.
try to keep about 25,000 in that. Our last big project that when we took money out was about 90,000. We built just around a half a mile of roadways to be able to get to this point now to start to make things kind of work together. We have engineers coming in to make sure our plots are all together. They just doing the whole perimeter of the roadways. And then we'll have a final plans and stuff like that, which is gonna include the plots that could have your name on it. You don't have to use it right away, you know.
I was gonna say,
You know,
you're
we,
gonna insist
an
on
invest-
immediate occupancy? Group?
It's an
no.
Okay.
It's an investment.
You can
we-
pick your own
we-
shrubs.
We used to have a,
Exactly. I gotta see what your shrubs look like first.
well, you can,
He sounds like
kind of
he's
put a
like
list together.
He sounds like he's a flip your plot guy, kind of guy.
Well, we kind of had,
You
at
fixed
one
it
time,
already.
what we used to call employee discount burial site, that any board members and stuff like that, but it was only a joking type of thing, because we had it on our brush pile. But we're not allowed to burn anymore, so we're going through the process of learning how to chip all the stuff that we have all the time and stuff, so.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, so the 25,000 is coming out of the account for selling lots, right?
Yep, that's part of it. Well, that is what that is for. The money when we sell a plot, let's say right now we have $800, we usually take $400, put it in perpetual care, and then the other $400 would go into sales of lot.
Okay.
Sales of lot money does not incur any interest. Perpetual care money, we can only use the interest,
Of that.
and then everything else is right to that point. I think we have about $170,000 in that perpetual care account. When I started here 20 years ago, it was down to about 30,000.
But you are planning to use for this project any money out of the perpetual care account?
If we needed to, we could, because perpetual care is for beautification, helping out with fertilizing, any of that kind of
But
stuff.
that's not a piece of the article itself.
No,
That's right.
yep. Because we can get that money at any particular time. We can
don't
use
need
that.
town approval for that.
Yep, well, we don't need any approval.
So, to the chair's earlier point, this is gonna be revenue neutral, including the gazebo gift. And it's really more like raise and transfer, but
Right.
it's a capital item, so it needs to be discussed. Now that GH has finished selling cemetery plots, I mean, I don't need one. I'm gonna end up, when my wife is through with me, on some gully outside of Route 495.
You know, that's not appropriate place of being left. In fact, last night I got called to pick up a dead animal down in Kingland Lang, so.
Well, I
Don't
can't,
you have like a three spoke rake for him?
I don't think I can do much about what my wife plans to do with my remains, but having sold some cemetery plots, can I sell the last pieces of,
Give it to Peter.
and then get out of here?
Peter wants one.
Unless you were,
I'll take those.
ladies first.
I already had one, so give
Oh.
it to Peter.
Yeah, Jean and I
Sorry.
split
Yeah, we
one.
split one, so. All right. They're messy, but.
Oh, you're gonna have to split.
Thank you, sir. Thank your daughter as well.
Is there anything more
All right,
substantive to
Jane.
discuss?
I'm
Splitting
Are you
with
sure?
you.
I already had half.
Thanks for coming back, GH.
Oh, for you,
I
anything.
did a nice job of those.
Thanks, GH.
That's it?
Okay,
That's it.
Live, that's all?
That's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate you folks for doing what you do.
Okay.
And thanks for being here and everything else, because someone's got to be here. I can't be the only one that does all the entertaining around this town.
All right. So Article 33, Lower Village Safety Improvements. We went over this with Jesse at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah.
$490,000 to basically finish the Lower Village street part of the street that's unfinished. So that's pretty big number generally. In fact, I think, if I remember historically, we spend between $500 and $700,000 on capital. And we had borrowed almost $500,000 before, as we heard earlier. So borrowing almost the same amount to finish it up is, goes without stating, kind of frustrating for this committee and I think for most citizens. Anybody have any thoughts on that, or should we move on? Okay.
This is my copy.
Article 34 is the establishment of the Stabilization Fund for the Neshoba Regional School District. I believe this is to support full-day kindergarten. There's going to be a gap year where they don't get funding for this from the state for it. And so this allows them to start storing with that money specifically for that use. Article 35, another, the most significant, I believe, or actually the second most significant in terms of cost for the capital items. $625,000 for a new pumper truck. I'm the liaison for the fire department. I think most people hold the fire chief, like most of our officials, in high esteem, and he's actually a former mechanic, so he actually knows, or a current mechanic, and he knows when to not send good money after bad, and he determined that the primary attack piece needed to be replaced, and that's where we end up with a $625,000 new fire truck. So as we move on to Article 36, this is the most expensive, and I'm actually seeing that it's at $850,000. This is to replace the HVAC for the town building.
Can I
Just a
ask
huge number. Yes.
Yeah, you know, virtually every other major capital expenditure, we have some idea why and what the pieces are. Did we have anybody come in and tell us what has to be done?
Well, I think
You got a parts list, job list right here.
But no one came in and we could,
Well, look, this is Craig Martin's put it together in conjunction with BLW. He came to us, he's been in capital planning a couple of times, so we refine these numbers, which keep going up.
if
I haven't inspected the system. In his word, we can't even wait another year, or, you know,
Oh, really? Okay.
That's
one of the questions I had, or thought that I had, and it may be ridiculous, and you can tell me if it is, but my understanding is part of the cost is because they can only do a section at a time, and they can't just blow through the whole job at one time.
That's correct. The building will be occupied throughout.
Question, how many days is it going to take? Do we have any idea how many?
It was inside of 6 months, which surprised me. I don't know. I don't have an exact.
No, but you know, that's the total time, but I'm talking about when we have men and women on site doing the work. Maybe we ought to shut the town hall, the town building down for a week, have, everything is done electronically nowadays. I know you don't like the idea.
It's not all done electronically. It's not.
So we'll
A
put
lot of, so anyway,
the
but.
town building, so the town employees could all move to Linda's barn.
Down to Pacifica. You
I
shut
don't
down
mean to be
the,
flippant. I agree that it's a good.
petition off Pacifica for a period of time. Because, you know, if you gotta shut down, start up, shut down, start up, that's gotta be very, very expensive for this project.
Mm-hmm. So, I guess my thoughts are, Pete, if you have any other,
I can follow up with what Paul is saying, is in the sense out of it is, at our last year's hearings, we asked specifically the building department about projection of various big projects for the next 5-year plan. And, you know, we were not alerted to any larger project like this at that point in time. That I find, you know, the lack of planning, you know, HVAC system being old, what else is old? You know, what other $1 million projects are hidden here within those operations is something that is puzzling to me, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. And
You
what
think maybe-
specific is the, you know, what's
the
about
urgency?
I believe there's 2 systems, right? meter and the HVAC. I believe the furnace is failing. Apparently, every bit of ductwork has to be replaced. Don't know why. Building's only 30 years old, and we have to replace 2 full systems. So the one difference in these is the use of the mini splits and heat pumps, which we asked about, and now the number's gone up to $850.
With that in there, or just?
With that in there.
Hmm.
Supposedly getting more efficiency, which, as far as I can tell, amounts to $2,000 a year.
So it would take us 25 years to recover that?
Which is,
extra 50 grand?
apparently that's the estimated life of a HVAC. Right, we're replacing one that's 30 years old, so I see no
Yeah.
gain from that. I did miss, some of the initial discussions on the urgency. But apparently that's, my layman's understanding is that all this is in the regulation, of the systems.
So we're out of compliance or soon to be out of
No,
compliance?
not that, the actual regulation of the heat, the temperature
Gotcha.
regulation. And it doesn't, it's not effective. Maybe we have someone here who's in the building every day. She could probably describe the urgency, but I'm still just stunned by the cost.
And this, I think.
Which I,
Mhm.
working through, the outsized cost is directly due to the prevailing wage. We are paying people $80 an hour to come in here, set up each morning, because it has to be clean up each night, because it's gonna be, but there's nothing we can do about it. It's a state law, and it has to be bid that way, and that is where the giant price tag comes from. Because it's a labor job, and we're being gouged. It's outrageous to me that the state can pass a law, satisfy a small constituency, and double the cost to every town in the state. Because literally these same people are doing other jobs for literally half of the cost. Anyway, that is not gonna change, but that's, as I dug into it, I realized that's the problem, and there's nothing we can do about it.
But that goes back to Paul's commentary, but if that is the setup and downtime cost onto this,
Right.
with the prevailing wage as a component is the biggest driver of this massive cost. Honestly, closing down the town hall for a month to do
Or at least a big
this,
portion of it.
this is an incredibly expensive project.
Yeah, I'm on the Building and Grounds Committee at St. Isidore. Now, I admit, it's one big open, but it's gonna be about $35,000 for us to replace, to air condition and heat pump that place. About $35,000.
Right, so that's in here. The materials are not what's driving this cost.
That's material and labor,
Yeah.
not $80 an hour, though, I can tell you that.
Bucks an hour. Anyway, can
Well-
we hear from some specifics?
Well, I'm not the building inspector, and that's his project, but I can tell you as
As a
an
resident.
employee in the building, this side of the building can be running hot in this, and that side can be running cold. And the temperature difference in the summer, the AC is running over on this side, and it trying to cool on this side, and it's freezing them over there. In the winter, the heat, they get the sun in the winter, and the heat would be running in here, and they're keeping it high, and they're still cold over there. So there's a discrepancy even on east, north, and south, and first and second floors. We could be freezing on the first floor and be hot up on the second floor. But I know there's different systems, and there are 2 systems. There's the night system that is what Craig explained at one time is the hot water along the baseboard, and then it has the air control system, that the HVAC.
So we have systems that's capable of heating the building and capable of cooling the building. Almost 2 extremes in each case.
In each case, and it hasn't
We
worked
get a couple
properly
of
in the 18 years that I've been in this building, it hasn't worked properly. But my understanding, it hasn't worked much better before that, so.
That gets to the urgency piece of it, so, it's clearly the system is not working.
Right, and I know that there have been leaks in different places that they've repaired in, water, in Maureen's office and the hallway, down on the first floor. So I don't know what the status is. This is all Craig's department, and I'm just speaking as someone who's been in the building. I know that, I don't know the details.
All right, well,
Can I ask you
Sure.
slightly different? Because you deal a lot with compliance.
Yep.
What degree of compliance requires the town hall or certain town offices to always be open?
Some of it is more of the demand of the population. I mean, we're busy all the time with people coming in and out and paying taxes and doing, like right now, we're in the midst of, my office is dog licensing and other information, dog licensing, and then we're getting into voter registration and election stuff. But
Yeah.
the treasurer collector's office is constantly with taxes, whether it's real estate or excise or personal property, those things, there could be a steady stream of people in here. As far as, to Paul's comment, electronically, yes, there's many things that many of us can do electronically, but a lot of mine is not electronic. It's with the hard copy, and I mean, moving the stuff out of here. I mean, I'm hoping the hell it's not the November of 2020 when we're thinking of doing this project, because that will really mess up because of the elections that we're doing in the fall of 2020. So there's a lot of issues.
But there's no requirement, that there's not a state mandate, for instance, that your office.
No, except on certain deadlines, like for elections or something.
For elections, things like that.
Right, you're right. Early voting has to be done at periods of time, or
yeah.
voter registration.
Why don't we
I'm
take-
not aware of anybody else. It's the demand of our residents and the work that we do. You think of the contractors coming into the building department and the,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm just throwing that out.
But that's more of a convenience issue versus what you're required to do, right?
Right.
There's
All right, well, let's-
difference between those.
Yeah.
let's take this under advisement. We'll get some more
We need some
clarification.
more clarification.
Especially from the committee, the capital planning committee is gonna do a lot more due diligence on this. So I appreciate all the comments and everything, but it kind of
I know.
keep moving.
Yeah, me too.
Two things. By the way, the Article 35, the previous one for the pumper truck, it is a ballot question. So there will be a question. This is a debt exclusion. So we have to, as a town, vote on this to affirmatively exempt ourselves to temporarily raise our levy so we can borrow this money. And the same thing with this HVAC. If it does pass, we're gonna have to have a separate ballot vote, separate from town meeting to approve the spending here. I'm gonna keep moving if everybody's okay with that.
Stay with that.
The legal services funds, I believe this went down to $30,000 this year, so that's a good thing. The town is spending less money on attorneys. Article 38, so there was a number of different requests for increased staff and salaries, I guess, wages. And so the town administrator opted to have an employee compensation survey. I believe that this will be done by a professional that will go out and assess what's, fair, I guess. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but what the market rate perhaps is for the different positions employed by the town. And that will be used to drive how we staff and or pay the employees that work here. So a lot of those decisions were put off for a year until this study comes out. It's not a small amount, it's 15 grand, but I don't believe it's been done in
8 to 10 years.
8 to 10 years at least, right?
It was the last salary survey done by a committee.
Okay, there you go. So anecdotally, 8 to 10 years. So the town clerk, who happens to be present, is looking for about $7,000 for new ballot box and tabulator. So that's something to consider, probably necessary. Article 40 refers to the public access money. So this money, if you have cable or FiOS, that type of thing, the utility collects the money and then gives that money back to the state, back to the communities to fund public access television. And the state has been requiring that money be appear in the budget and as a warrant article apparently, and so that's why that is on the budget. It's actually revenue neutral, I think is the way to refer to it. It's only spent by Stow TV, and there's no taxation that goes into raising those funds. Article 41 has to do with veterans benefits. So we, as a community, fund our veterans services. I believe it's healthcare, among other things. I also believe that this is reimbursed 75% by the state. So that's what that budget was for. Article 42, the Aspet River water chestnut control. So we contribute money to ORS, which is an organization that helps control invasive species on the Aspet River. Article 43, every year the town pays $5,000 to have police patrol Lake Boone, and that money pays for that. Probably a good idea. Article 44, veterans benefits.
It must be a repeat.
That does seem like a repeat, doesn't it?
Same wording and everything.
Yeah.
I would assume that's gonna be
Yeah.
pulled.
Okay, so this is a draft warrant, so. All right, so moving on, so we have a student in town that's gonna be going to the Norfolk County Agricultural High School. And because they're going there, we pay the assessment for them to go there. And apparently it's significantly expensive. It's $23,000, if I seem to remember the estimate. The estimate vocational school is around 17 or 16,000. And in comparison, the cost per student to go to to Minuteman, our regional vocational district, is when you put in the debt as part of it, it's over $40,000 to send a student there. Don't mean to rush these too much. If anybody has any comments, please chime in. A little surprised it's 23,000. Article 46. This is an amendment to the general bylaws, so it's revenue.
Actually, I would make a comment on that.
Okay, back to
23,000 in the context of all the conversations we had with the various different school committees seems to me, at least to me, to be a fair value.
Yeah.
This is significantly cheaper than sending a student to Minuteman.
Yep. And not an equal education in the sense of the same subject matter.
It's not the same subject matter,
Yeah.
but it is the same grade level that you're sending a student to the different schools. When we think about the cost of having a Nashoba in the Nashoba school district, I can't quote the number that is. It's a much smaller number on average in schools, but that is an average number from K all the way through high school. Obviously, education in high school is the most expensive portion of educating a kid.
Yeah.
So this is a very fair value that the town of Stow is receiving for this student that is interested in these aspects.
Okay. Article 36 is an amendment to the general bylaws. it doesn't affect the taxation of the town. So look for us to understand that more, and we'll have an opinion on it. It looks like to be some rule changes around how people operate on the lake.
So just a comment on that, since the Finance Committee has to make a recommendation on any article that's a portion of the warrant, this is not a financial article. It would be very nice to have some commentary with regard to the nature of public hearings with the residents at Lake Boone with regard to the change of this amended bylaw.
Yeah, so maybe what we can do, Atlee, in that spirit of that, is we'll ask somebody from the Lake Boone Commission to come to our meeting before the town meeting, so we can make a recommendation.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Mr. Chair, now you have several articles that have all to do with easement. Maybe you could do them all
Yeah,
together?
we'll do like a consent calendar kind of thing. So, Article 40, I'll just read the titles. One has to do with the pedestrian improvement easement from the Presti family. We're just accepting the easement down in front of the car dealership there. There's another one, similar scenario, Article 48. The next one is very similar as well. These are all revenue neutral. Article 50, remember these numbers changes. This is the Great Road pedestrian improvement easement for the Lower Village. So these are all the building, all the people along that route that have given up part of their land or some sort of easement so that we can finish the road. 52 is another one from Madeline Properties. 53 from the Stow Community Condominium Trust. 34 Meeting House Lane. Article 54 for 132 Great Road. Article 55 for is something different. This is for the establishment of a revolving fund for the Pompo School operations and maintenance. There will be rental money that comes from people going to the community center. I'm not sure why it says school here. Should say community center.
Yeah, I think that would be a good thing to note and actually send back to Maureen.
Yes.
This is an inappropriate title of Article 55.
Yeah. So maybe it's just a mistake there. So we would get rental monies from the community center and this sense of a revolving fund, so that those monies can be kept separate from the general fund. Article 56. So this is a pretty important one, I think, to many of the Finance Committee members. So as you probably heard earlier from Jesse Steadman, that Chapter 90 funds were saved up to fix the road down by the Lower Village, and more Chapter 90 funds were then applied to button up the road, other things and it depleted that. So this one allows us to transfer appropriate money from the overlay surplus for $175,000 to go back in Chapter 90 funds, so we can stay on the regular schedule of getting our roads repaired. As a reminder, Chapter 90 funds are monies that we get from the state specifically for our infrastructure. Article 57, this has to do with the Community Preservation Act. It looks like we didn't transfer the right amount of money, and we're transferring additional monies into each one of these different reserves.
So by statute, we are required to allocate 10% in each of these bins of the total revenue that is collected for community preservation in each calendar or each fiscal year. So the assumption was undershooting by this amount for each of the bins.
Okay. So that trues us up for last year.
This is a statutory requirement to adjust this.
To adjust it, okay. And does this normally happen?
It has happened in the last 2 years. As a consequence of that, we have previous article that did this allocation for the next fiscal year actually is building in a greater buffer in that to avoid this in the future.
Okay. All right, so the next one, Article 58, as of written right now, is interest on the long-term debt. I believe, if I remember talking to the town administrator, that there was a incorrect calculation or perhaps even a mistake in the way that they budgeted for long-term debt interest last year, and so, or for this fiscal year 19, that's one, right?
Yeah.
And so this $90,000 that's being raised and appropriated to that reflects, is necessary to, for that budget item. It was almost $90,000 short. Article 59, frankly mentions the town election that we have on May 14th, 2019, and talks about the different people that are going to be elected, which you can read for yourself, and includes those two ballot questions that I mentioned earlier for the debt exclusions on the fire truck and on the HVAC for the town building. And that concludes going through the warrant. Anybody have any other questions? I think we can conclude our public hearing. Thanks for listening.